any photo that I took, I wanted to work for it, and that's kind of grown. And owls is definitely there's something that you have to work for. You have to put in a ton of work. You have to front load your work to reap the benefits later. And anymore, if something gets handed to me, no matter how good the picture is, I don't look at it the same way from a personal perspective. So that's definitely something that keeps my drive alive to photograph owls.
Nice. No, that's awesome. And it totally makes sense. Yeah. So you want
So,
to
all
move
right,
right along here?
we're yeah. Okay. So here's another photo I wanted to just show. Starting off, this is a raw file of a great gray owl. This photo to me, personally, doesn't do a whole lot for me. It's just an owl in flight. There's nothing interesting about it, and so a lot of the photos you're going to see, whether it be light or action or showing habitat, to me, I want a photo that tells a story. Maybe it's environment, maybe it's interesting behavior. A great gray owl flying through the woods doesn't really do it for me. And you might ask, why did I even take this shot? And we'll see a photo later on, and I'll never not take a photo
Yeah.
because you never know what can happen. But this is a photo that I never processed. This is straight out of the camera. I think I cropped it a little bit just for the presentation, but really, I these kind of photos don't do anything for me.
Well, and I think what you just said with, telling a story is a great thing for all wildlife photography, but especially with these specific birds. They're so elusive. Many of us, myself included, find it difficult to find them, know a lot about them. So, the fact that you're consciously making an effort to tell the story of that bird and its specific habits or its habitat, I think is even more important with owls than maybe, songbirds or shorebirds or something like that. So that makes sense.
Exactly. Yep.
What's this all
Okay. Yeah, I
about?
think we did. Okay. Wow. That's a picture of
It's a
sticks. I don't
lot
know
of
how that
sticks.
got in there.
Quite a few.
Okay, so I wanted to show a few photos. One of the biggest things that I hear from people on Instagram, whether it be in a comment or a message, is, wow, how do you find so many owls? They must be everywhere. And it's true that they are everywhere, but I wanted to show you guys a few photos of what it really looks like.
That's incredible.
We'll see a couple photos that came out of here. If anybody can guess in the comments before I give it away. Oh, there you go. So this is a willow thicket in the middle of nowhere in eastern Washington, and in the winter, it's a great place to go look for long-eared owls. They love this kind of stuff. That's another typical look at a long-eared owl.
Wow.
Really obstructed. Maybe flip to the next one.
Yep. Yeah.
So there's two together, and that's your typical look, and people see these photos that really celebrate the bird and they're wild, but this is the game. I mean, the more they do have a tendency to co-roost. You have a field of short-eared owls, long-eared owls do the same thing, but they
Okay.
tend to be a little bit closer together. So I've had roosts from anywhere between 4 and 13 birds, and
Wow.
the more birds, the more opportunity you have to get one that's a little less obstructed. But you could spend a whole lot of time looking for them, and then you get something like this,
Yeah.
and there's really nothing to be had. So
Yeah, I guess
the
that's
more
the deal sometimes, right? You just if there's only so much you can do, you know.
exactly, yep. Especially with long-eared owls, barn owls really hide. This is a northern saw-whet owl.
Yeah.
This is 90% of the time. This is what it looks like.
Yeah.
This is the game. So let's see. Flip to the next one.
Yeah.
Here's another bad shot. So this was this year. I took my friend Daniel Dietrich out to southeastern Washington, another relatively in the same area as the long-eared owls. Eastern Oregon and eastern Washington is high desert, and it's a great place in the winter because you have southbound migrants, and then you also have elevation migrants that come down. So their numbers kind of balloon, and since the habitat's so desolate, you can kind of just look in trees that you think you might hold one.
Yeah.
And he had never seen a saw-whet before, so I took him out. We had 6 birds in 3 hours.
Nice.
Wow.
This is the best look at one we got that day.
Wow.
So Adam, just real quick, when you said you're identifying the habitat, but how do you know where? I mean, these things are only a few inches tall. Are are you looking at like pellets and whitewash and that sort of thing?
So, yeah, saw-whets are all about whitewash. They tend to roost low, and they tend to leave a lot of evidence under them. And in theory, I've seen them in stuff that doesn't look like this. Those birds are in Portland and in the rainforest, so everything's kind of dense.
Gotcha.
This is just in some sort of conifer. I'm drawing a blank. And basically, the thicker the better. So this is on the outer part of the tree and the low hanging stuff where it's really dense.
Yeah.
So I've never found one like up against a trunk. They're always in the really dense stuff. So if you can look at it and you can see through it, it's probably not good.
Wow.
And it's just and they're one of the birds that until you find one, until you look at one sitting and where it likes to sit, it's kind of hard to describe appropriate habitat. But
sure,
once you see one,
you probably almost naturally look in the opposite spots of where they are actually found, just because that's where you would want it to be to photograph it.
Exactly, and oftentimes, like this bird, I'd say a good portion of the time you see whitewash before you find a bird.
Gotcha. Nice. I'll move right on to the next one here.
Cool. Okay. So I did a little trickery here. Anybody see the bird in that photo?
Yeah.
Yeah. I cloned its head off because you could see its yellow eyes looking at me.
Gotcha.
But if its eyes were closed, that's a great horned owl in a western juniper.
Wow.
That's pretty hard to see.
Yeah.
This is a 500 millimeter. So imagine looking up at that tree. I would guess you probably wouldn't see it.
Sure.
That bird
You'd walk
really
right by
blends
it.
in. That's an apex predator. That's a big bird, and
Yeah.
it can really hide. And it's really not even behind a whole lot of stuff. So
I was just gonna say, yeah, it's almost perfect camouflage. I'll zoom in just a little bit there for the viewers to see, but man, that's just incredible stuff.
And great horned, is adaptable as they are and as common as they are. They live in every habitat.
Sure.
They're one of my nemesis birds to photograph because they're so skittish.
Yeah.
And they're often either really high or really obstructed. So
Gotcha.
they're tough. They're tough.
Nice. This is a little bit better look now.
Yeah, so this is a long-eared owl. Almost every single one of my long-eared owl photos, and I think I've seen over 50 long-eared owls in the last 2 years.
Wow, congrats.
All but 2 were taken out of my truck. So I always photograph them from a vehicle. And this bird is pretty much how it looks when they realize someone sees them and it's freaked out.
Yeah.
So this is just kind of what they do. Usually in this kind of habitat, this is the same thicket as you guys saw before. So if they kind of flush or get fidgety, they usually just move around within the thicket.
Okay.
But this is kind of like their spooked look, like, holy cow, I can't believe somebody found me.
Sure, and it has that obvious look to it, yeah.
Yeah, and at that point, I just sit really still in my truck and kind of crouch down and, 10 minutes later, let them calm down and then do my thing.
Okay.
And then obviously,
Adam,
yep.
Just to curious, would you share this image on social media, or is this because of the pose and the alert stance you would not?
I think I did at one point, and I took it down. It's kind of borderline. It's obviously pretty freaked out, but it's still sitting there. And I think if it was really, if a line was crossed, it would have moved
It'd
back
be gone,
into
yeah.
something thicker.
Yep.
Yeah. And so that's another topic. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit more. Owl photography. There's a lot of talk about ethics.
Sure.
and too close and freaking birds out and flushing them. So as a photographer, if you don't necessarily care about that kind of stuff, if you want good photos, it's only beneficial to you if you practice good ethics. Because if I opened up my door, this bird's gone, and then no photos. If you get too close and you flush a bird, and you decide to pursue it, it's only going to flush easier the next time. So it only benefits you as a photographer to proceed with caution and hang out for a little bit and let them get used to you.
No, that
Yep.
makes sense. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah.
Good point.
Nice. Look at the eyes on that thing.
There we go again. That's about that's a Saw-Whet about 20 seconds away from a heart attack.
Yeah.
So I share this with you guys to just, I'm not above getting too close. I didn't get too close to this bird on purpose. It was underneath a little bush, and I stuck my head up there. I actually told a story about a Saw-Whet in this very same bush. This is the first bush I ever found one in. This is a year later. So I peeked under, and I was, within 4 feet, and it's scared. And Saw-Whets don't flush unless you probably tried to pick one up, because that's their main line of defense.
Okay.
If you flush a Saw-Whet, it's bad news for it. I mean, a Cooper's hawk, a sharp-shinned, anything could get it.
Lots of stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, after I found it, I just backed up, 10 feet, sat down, and let it calm down. But,
and how long
does...
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
How long does, on average, would you say something like that take? Is it pretty quick? 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes before they kind of relax?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the farther you back up, the quicker it'll be.
Sure, gotcha. And I assume every bird's kind of individual.
Yeah, so I backed up like 15 feet and sat down to where I could still see it. Okay. And kind of put my camera in front of my face, and it calmed down pretty quick.
Nice.
And it was still awake, but as you if you flip back,
sure.
So it's not only is its eyes big, but it's also in a concealment posture. It's super skinny and kind of upright.
Okay.
So they calm down, they sit down, and if you just take your time with them, they'll go back to just sitting there and being calm.
Awesome. Man, the scenery you have out there for these birds is just incredible.
So this is just a snapshot. Hopefully everybody can see the barred owl on the left tree.
Yep, right in here.
So, a lot of times when we see photos, it's hard to understand what we're seeing, in real life. Like, what did the photographer see with his eyes? We just see the photo.
Yeah.
And focal length and light, and it can all look beautiful, but what's it really look like? And so this is just, a barred owl sitting on a tree from this angle. There's not really anything interesting. So, every time I find an owl, the first thing I think about isn't really the owl. It's what are my options? What can I do to make this photo interesting? Is there light? What kind of angle can I use? What kind of foreground can I use? All these questions should be going through your head so you can take a photo that has a little bit more to it than just a close-up shot of an owl, which we've all seen before.
Sure.
I think every one of us can go without seeing another tight crop barred owl shot.
I am right there with you, man.
So what can I do? And sometimes you can't do anything. Maybe you wait and something might happen, but until that does happen, explore your options, look for angles. Don't leave no stone unturned. I made this mistake so many times when I was first starting out. I come home and I automatically think I could have done something different. I could have got something better, but I just didn't take the time to do it.
Sorry about
that. Let's see.
You want to hit the next one?
Yeah. So this is the same owl on the same perch.
Nice.
Oh wow.
And this was taken about 15
That's a little
minutes.
better.
Yeah. So this is taken about 15 minutes later. I backed up and there was a big leaf maple with ferns growing up the side of it. That's the entire right side of the frame. That tree is about 10 feet in front of me, so I used that as a foreground element.
Nice.
And then a little bit of sun started to shine through, and you got a little bit of light bleed come in from it's kind of side lit. And then I just framed it up, waited for the owl to kind of turn around, and took a photo. And that's pretty much it. There's also the...
let me do this real quick for the viewers here, just to kind of...
So I'm kind of looking sideways at it, but I guess the direction the owl is facing, there's kind of a nice drainage ditch with a ridge. So I just kind of picked a corridor to kind of give me some background separation.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Created the foreground with ferns, and there you go. So that's the same owl on the same day, 15 minutes later.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Hey, Adam, one question I had that I get really frustrated with a lot of owl photography, especially with perched owls, is the view tends to always be from the bottom up. So you're looking kind of like what that first picture looks like. To me, it's not real flattering. So even when I see cool owls and people sharing them, I'm not really drawn to it as, wow, that's a great image, because the perspective just doesn't feel right. How do you take that into account, and do you do anything different? Like I always thought, do you walk around with like a forklift or something to get on this owl's level? Because that second image, you look like you're pretty much on the same plane.
Yeah. So focal length is your friend in terms of angles, and really, in that forest, the snapshot I took was up on a ridge. The owl is a little bit above me, but it's not that far above me, and so, at 500 or whatever I was at here, I'm not really sure. It looks a little bit more eye level, and there's definitely a line. I mean, if it's too high, it's just too high, and I just don't shoot it. And the only thing you can really do to remedy that is to back up. And the farther you get back, and the longer your focal length, it looks a little more eye level.
Sure. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And that's just it's a numbers game. I mean, this bird was just on a low perch. This was before it started to get hunting, so it just decided to roost here.
Nice.
It's not always like that.
Of course. Yeah.
So
and then I also like, now I just brought up the setting, so it was at 440 millimeter. But also, it's deceivingly dark in there. Obviously, this was at 1/20th of a second. So a much slower shutter speed than most photographers would even think of shooting. But you're already pushed to ISO 800 at that rate. So
my lens isn't a fast lens. It's f/5.6 all the way through. So it's a pretty it's a modest lens. But I'll talk about shutter speeds a little bit more later. And
I know you got some fun stuff with that.
Yeah, I'm not afraid at all to drop my shutter speed with owls. Here's another what's my option here? It's a baby great gray owl sitting on a branch.
Yep.
Pretty boring.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yep, just a snapshot.
Yeah.
Go to the next one. A little bit better.
Yeah.
And all I did was kind of the same theory as the last one. I just chose a different angle, put a big tree in my foreground, lined it up with another tree in the background, and this is a photo I never shared. It's not something that I really like, but I think it's much better than the first photo we just saw.
Oh, for sure. It actually has some depth to it now, so there's definitely a wild difference there.
And I think 100 people would have shared that first one without even considering another option.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it seems, one of the advantages of photographing owls is their tendency to stay put when you are not disturbing them. So it allows you time to actually really think about these processes. It's something that Scott and I get asked all the time, how do you get these backgrounds and these foregrounds like this? And it's a matter of consciously thinking about it. You're doing it on a much different scale than a lot of what we do, because ours is usually a lot more fast-paced. But as I'm sure you've noticed after doing this for years, half the time you probably just go out now and you don't even really consciously think, I have to start looking around. You just start doing it. It just becomes second nature.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you just immediately, your first course of action is to start kind of looking around, seeing what options are there for you. And, that happens on a much faster scale, even with birds that aren't going to stay around very long. So I just kind of wanted to mention that to the viewers. Sweet. Nice burrow.
So here's another bad photo I took. I wanted to talk about this burrowing owl specifically. And I'm not going to knock anybody personally. There's a lot of birders who photographed this burrowing owl in Portland, Oregon. This was last winter. Not this past winter, but 2 winters ago, I guess. Burrowing owls pop up in Western Oregon in the winter, kind of all over the place, but they're not reported a whole lot just because they're kind of hard to find.
Yeah.
When it's just one. And they can kind of be anywhere. This one was along the Columbia River right across from the airport. And it got reported. And people went out and photographed it. And I don't like to chase birds and owls and stuff, but it was a weekday morning. It was cloudy and it was cold, and I was bored, so I went and did it. There was nobody else there. So if you go on eBird and type in Multnomah County and with Burrowing Owl, you can probably find a bunch of pictures of this bird, and all the pictures look like this. It's just a burrowing owl on some rocks.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of sticky stuff around it. It's just a bunch of, snapshots of owls, or the burrowing owl.
Sure.
And I know, a lot of people that I know around here, they have decent gear, and they act like they don't care about good pictures. And I think that's a little misleading, because if you really didn't care about taking good pictures, you wouldn't invest a few thousand dollars in camera gear. So for me, this bird, it was all about, again, what can I do to get a somewhat decent picture? And I didn't come away with anything mind blowing, but the next picture shows a pretty clean portrait of it. I think.
That's awesome.
And I'm not going to sit up here and say my photos are the best, or I think I'm a great photographer, but this is the best burrowing owl photo that I saw out of that bird.
Yeah.
And the only thing I did was I determined, hey, this is the little area it likes to be in. What angle can I get to eliminate a lot of the sticky grass and the sky? And it was on kind of a slope, so I just made a big loop around the bird. I got up to high ground right on the edge of the little rocky slope, and I laid down and I just kind of crept up. Every couple of minutes I'd move a couple of feet, and it would just stay there. And they kind of do this thing where they bob up and down if they kind of get nervous. So whenever it would do that and start looking around, I just stop, and I just spent 30 minutes, 45 minutes getting close to it, and that's what you get. I mean, it's just patience, time. It all starts with a thought in your head.
Sure. And
I really didn't do anything special. I mean, it's still just a burrowing owl on a rock, but it's just a lot cleaner.
Yeah, patience is incredibly underrated, and just to kind of hit a topic that Scott and I have talked about a lot, and that's just, your background and distance and background separation. The quality photo you have on the right in the same scene puts the background dozens or more feet away from the bird, whereas the other shot on the left, the background is just a few feet behind it, and you don't get any of that separation. So,
it's just kind of cluttered, and sometimes that works. Most times it doesn't.
Correct. Yeah. So nice job thinking about that.
No, Adam, you talked about like crawling up on this owl and sneaking up on. I just wanted to share a quick story with everybody. You'll probably get a kick out of this since I didn't tell you. So we're out the other day at the Jersey Shore, and we're in this wetlands area, and we both decided we wanted whimbrel really bad this year. So we see a flock, and they travel in groups. So there's about 20 or 30 whimbrel out there.
Yeah.
They're a country mile away. And Ray's like, well, we'll just belly crawl up on them. And I'm like, all right, that's cool, Ray, but we're in the middle of a bed of mussels. So he wants to belly crawl a mile in a bay of mussels. And I know these whimbrel are going to flush anyway when we get there.
Yeah.
But the strategy is there. But sometimes it does take a little bit extra work.
Yep.
Yep, exactly.
All right, nice.
Cool. So, this is a photo I think would look decent, kind of blown up big. It's not really something for social media or something people might be drawn to, but this is a female great gray. She was hunting. She was pretty far away, and if you're there and you're looking at the scene, she's relatively high. It might not look like it here, but so really, if you get close, you're just gonna point your lens farther and farther up, and you're not gonna get anything good. And
Correct.
She's hunting, and you don't want to walk up to her, and she's just sitting on a stick. I mean, there's nothing there that is gonna amount to anything. So I just backed way, way up, and I included as many of the trees as I could, and they kind of make this little corridor of ponderosa pines. And to me, it's sometimes it's more about the scene than the bird. And, again, this photo isn't anything spectacular, but it's 10 times better than anything I could have got if I, just filled her up in the frame.
Yep.
Moving right along.
Cool. Another, just a great horned owl. Same bird that we saw earlier with no head. She she was in that tree. This is the same tree that I photographed a recently fletched baby. I left the nest area for like 45 minutes and went and looked elsewhere to see what I could find. And I came back and she was in this tree. And again, really, really tough to photograph. So I just basically backed up, included as much foreground, found a little window, spent 10 minutes walking around.
Yeah, that framing is perfect.
Looking for any sort of window. And, you know, again, not a stunner, not a jaw dropper, but kind of the best thing I could get. And it didn't come right to me. Again, focal length plays tricks on your eyes. You look at this and you're like, that's obvious. It wasn't so obvious to me in person. It took me a little bit to work the scene and decide that was my best opportunity.
No, you're totally right. That's definitely something. You know, when you see the finished product, it seems exactly what you said. It seems obvious, but you know, when you like the examples that you showed earlier in the beginning, where it's just this massive thicket of sticks and stuff like that. You know, when you first walk up to that, it's kind of like, now what? You know, so
yeah, exactly. Cool. So snowy owl. This is I've only photographed 2 snowy owls. I don't have any snowy owl shots that I really like a whole lot. I despise photographing birds of any kind on man-made objects.
Yeah.
I refuse to do it unless it's something really cool. And I'll give a quick shout out to Tracy, one of your guys' friends out there from the East Coast.
Yeah.
She had one of the most just sick short-eared owl shots that I've ever seen, and it was sitting on some man-made stuff at Gettysburg.
Yep.
It was like you had like the atmosphere and the fog and all the mood with an owl on like a bunch of history. It was so cool.
Yeah, it was really neat.
So that's like a, you know, alternatively, I really don't. I hate it. But so what I'm getting at is this snowy owl is on a beehive box. So we found it. It's out in this huge, and by huge field I mean that's all you can see for miles and miles and miles.
Gotcha.
It's just grass, rolling hills. This is also out in southeastern Washington. Snowy owls pop up every winter. They don't erupt every winter out here, but 1 or 2 make it down. And this one just decided to sit out there. And when they show up out there, they're going to sit on a sign or abandoned farm equipment or something really ugly. So we found it, and the light was just starting to get pretty good. And basically I looked at the bird, and I was like, my only option is to somehow find a way to get rid of those beehive boxes, because I do not want that in my photo.
Yep.
So it's a snowy owl. They don't need any introduction. It doesn't need to be big in the frame for people to recognize it as snowy. So I started walking backwards, and I found like a little slope in the grass, and I just put as much grass in the foreground as I could and just kind of inch my lens down until I could see, you know, the face. Nice. And it's a pretty poor quality photo, but you know, on a small scale, it looks okay. And this was my only option. I mean, you get too close, and it's probably gonna flush. Yeah. And then you're gonna have a really bad photo of a snowy on a beehive box anyway.
That's too fun.
So, yep, that's about all.
Yeah.
For that one.
I had.
And I really.
Go ahead, Scott.
I just really like, you know, I've heard Adam say it like 3 or 4 times, and it's a message that, you know, Ray puts out there and I put out, but it's a lot about, okay, there's my subject, and stop focusing just on the subjects and start thinking about everything else around it: perspective, environment, foreground, background. This is a great example of that, because I think, again, a lot of people would have just seen it, been excited, you know, whipped out their $15,000 worth of camera gear and took 5,000 pictures of it sitting on a box. And then this one would have been seen at the same location and probably didn't even look like it was in the same bird. Like, it probably looked like 2 different birds, the same as that, you know, example with the burrowing owl, where everybody's taking the same picture. And you're just challenging the perspective and the angles a lot better. So really nice job.
Thanks.
Yeah, it almost gets to a point where everything else becomes almost more important than the subject itself. I mean, not really, but as far as thinking, because obviously the subject just jumps in your mind first. It's the obvious thing. But when you put more emphasis on the rest of it in your creation process, it makes for a better overall photo.
Yeah. So here's a Saw-Whet. This is probably, I would say, my best Saw-Whet photo from out east in the high desert. This window that you're looking at is 10% as big as what it looks like. I looked down after I found it. Took me a ridiculous amount of time to find this bird, and it's not in a big tree. This tree is very small, and the only reason I gave up once and came back, and I actually saw whitewash on the inside dripping, so I knew there was a bird in there somewhere.
Oh wow!
And I still couldn't find it. So I walked around and I found it from the outside, and I looked down and I was so fascinated at how it got in there. You literally had to stand in a 1 foot by about 8-inch box to even see the bird.
Wow!
If you were standing outside of that box, it was invisible.
Yeah.
So that's and again, for anybody out there who is curious about Saw-Whets or wants to go find their own, just know that they're there. They're just really hard to find.
Yeah. Have you?
Yeah, Adam. One thing that struck me with a lot of these images. Now these are obviously a lot cleaner, and the framing is really nice. Some of the original ones had a lot of sticks and stuff. A lot of people ask us questions about how much editing we do in terms of actual removal. So anything in these pictures, like with branch removal, I mean, is that a problem on a lot of these images?
I won't say I don't remove branches. I don't know if there's a photo in here. I'll remove if a stick is easy to remove and it's intersecting the bird. I don't really have a problem doing that. I don't do it a lot just because I share my images on Instagram. So
and it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, so like removal and stuff like that. I don't do a whole lot. I do light paint. I won't lie. I don't add artificial light. I think that is obvious and looks bad. But if there's real light there, I will enhance it. I will dodge and burn, till my head falls off. If the situation dictates that. Now a lot of the pictures don't, and we'll see a couple that I'll admit that it's got some pretty heavy dodging and burning, and just enhancing the light that's already there.
It also seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, you use a lot of foreground obstruction to eliminate a lot of those distracting branches. Yeah,
so this photo is it holds a special place in my heart. It might not be the best photo of a Saw-Whet out there, but this bird, the first Saw-Whet we saw in the intro, the really pretty clean, good look at one, this is the same bird. And when it was in the previous roost, it would be there once, I would say 2 or 3 times a week. And when it wasn't there, I made it a mission to find where it was. And it took me 5 days and 14 hours to find it. And they don't have big ranges. We'll just say that. So and when you're looking for a bird that small and that can hide that good, you're constantly thinking, did I overlook it? Am I going the wrong way? So long story short, I finally found it. And it took a lot of effort.
Nice.
And basically with a Saw-Whet, as long as you're cautious and you don't, run in there, they're not going to move. So you have, the entire day or what's left of daylight to explore different focal lengths, different angles. And so again, this is just a tiny little window that I shot it through, and it kind of, again, focal length, the blur, what I saw with my eyes, I could probably see one eye pretty good.
Nice.
And then the rest was pretty obstructed. So.
All right, cool. We'll move right
along. Hey, Adam, I in the comments, I just let everybody know that you shoot the 200 to 500. If any of these images are shot with a shorter focal length, if you specifically remember, just let us know. I think some people, especially with the Saw-Whets, were wondering, from a distance standpoint, how far away is that putting you at 500 millimeters, or are you going shorter because you're a little closer on those small trees?
Yeah, I would. You can raise gut it.
Yeah, that one's at 450. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the first one we saw was probably closer to 300. I honestly, I would say I shoot between 350 and 420, much more than I shoot all the way out at 500. But.
Okay.
Nice.
So this is a great gray owl. It is pretty high in a tree, and I was let's see what we were doing. We were walking across the river in Central Oregon, and we were about to give up for the morning because we were striking out and we couldn't locate a bird. And we were walking, and we were on high ground, and we looked over, and there's this great gray owl perched hunting off this tree line. And I looked at the scene, and I was like, holy crap, that's a huge bird, and it looks tiny. And so if you can just imagine this gigantic owl, and there's nothing else around it but green.
Yeah.
And looking and getting, I think, this view kind of, I'm actually looking down on it a little bit, but with, focal length, it kind of looks eye level-ish. Again, this is a terrible photo to share on Instagram, but I think if this was blown up huge, it would just give a great sense of scale.
Yeah, a lot of great texture, a lot of great color.
Yeah, and this is cropped just ever so slightly, I think, to fix the horizon, but this is pretty much full frame.
Nice.
So I could have cropped it way in,
sure.
And then at that point, all it is a great gray owl with less tree.
Yeah.
And then you don't have the sense of scale. So
yeah,
I thought it was a cool photo just to show this, one of the biggest birds we have in North America, kind of look dwarfed by just big tree line.
Yeah, definitely. That's pretty awesome. Let's move through some of these. I know we got some really good ones coming up too. So. What's
cool? So short-eared owls. You guys, everybody's familiar with short-eared owls. Their locations don't stay secret.
Yeah,
we've all seen. I could go the rest of my life without seeing another tight, crop, sharp short-eared owl in flight.
Yeah.
I mean, geez, they're overdone, And don't get me wrong, they're a ton of fun to shoot.
Sure.
However, how many photos can we really take of them before enough is enough? So
trying something different is good.
Yeah, I photographed them 4 times. I took a lot of the images I was just talking about. But again, how can I do something different? How can I create some art? And to me, this is one of my favorite photos I've ever taken just from an artistic standpoint. And it's not the sharpest. I think it's identifiable as a short-eared owl.
Sure.
But they are really bouncy in flight. So to get one, pretty sharp, this was taken at 1/30th of a second.
Yep.
So my main goal was to get a lot of pull in the grass and as much wing movement as I could. And they can fly pretty flat, but their wings aren't moving. So it's got some wing movement, and I think it's sharp enough to kind of work. Some people hate it. I've also had people tell me that this is their favorite short-eared owl.
That's awesome.
So it's a love-hate thing, and it's definitely not for everybody.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and for people shooting the slow motion, the shutter speed was just about right.
Yeah,
I think
I would agree.
Most people are between 1/10 and 1/50th. So if you want to play around with short shutters sometime, or slow shutters rather, 1/10 to 1/50th seems to be kind of a sweet spot, and I actually end up on 1/30th a lot. So.
Yeah, depends on the bird and their flight pattern, that sort of thing. So yeah.
Cool. Northern pygmy owls. This is a raw file. I didn't do anything with it. It's kind of boring. It was the first time I ever got to really photograph a northern pygmy owl.
Okay.
So I don't want to sound conceited when I'm talking about owls and how I'm thinking about all this stuff, because I know from personal experience, and even this bird right here that I just took this past winter, I was that guy. I've never had a good opportunity to photograph one, and I took like 2,000 pictures of it over the course of 5 hours.
Yeah.
I was just firing away, like anything I could do, and none of it was really great. But I mean, you get excited when you see a new bird.
Oh,
and
of course.
Like a bird as cool as a pigger. And this is another photo of it. It started to rain earlier that day, so I dropped my shutter speed down to somewhere, I don't know,
1/60th.
1/60th, just to get some pull in the rain. I think composition is a huge thing. I see bad compositions all the time, and it drives me nuts, because I think even a mediocre photo that doesn't have a whole lot going for it, if it's got a bad composition, it just makes it so much worse.
For sure.
So for me, it's all about, where's the bird looking? It's looking down. So I put it up in the top left corner, and it's kind of to me it seems simple, but I see a lot of people struggle with it. And I think if this had a bad composition, it'd look kind of awkward.
Yeah, you always do some really amazing compositions, and I really always enjoy that and your photography. And here I think coming up is going to be some really good, more good examples of that.
Cool. So here's another kind of example of just barred owl on a branch.
Yep.
Pretty standard.
Yeah.
Pretty boring.
Yeah. And then
so, boom, that is the same bird,
nice.
Different angle. 10 minutes later.
Okay. Wow.
With light. So again, the background is burned down a little bit. The photo on the left has no light. It's just kind of flat light. There's clouds. So all the light you see on the right, that's all real light. That's real sunlight, and just kind of dosh and burn to give it a little bit of a dramatic effect.
Sure.
But I mean, I don't put fake light in, but when I saw that light, I was like, holy crap! Like that is amazing.
That's awesome.
And that's quite a novelty on a barred owl, or really any owl in the woods to get light like that. So here's a baby great gray. Again, this photo had a lot to do with luck, and also it's a lot of, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but front loading your work. Like we went out in April, we went out early April, so a month and a half, a little bit longer before this photo was taken.
Oh wow.
We scouted 5 different great gray owl nests. Which ones are active? Which ones are we going to go to in late May when babies should be out? So if I hadn't have done that, who knows if I would even be in this position to take this photo.
Sure.
And got super lucky. Again, the more you play, the more you win.
Yeah.
This is a bird that we were there for it fledging, and we got up before sunrise. Usually great gray spend a day or two or whatever it may be on the ground. So this is the first little kind of burn stump that I decided to sit up on.
That's great.
First light on it.
Yeah, nice dramatic light.
Yep.
Yeah, find a clean background. And then this is just one of my favorite. This whole, all these that you have in this scene are just gorgeous.
Yep. So this is just another kind of simple, what can I do to make it interesting? Wait for the light. This was early in the morning. So this is, it's not super early in the morning. Early in the morning when you guys are out killing shorebirds and waders, when the light's good, there is no there is
it's
no
just
light
dark.
in the forest. So my good light, that first light, it's like 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there's some light bleed coming through, and then I backed way up and wanted to include some foreground element and just kind of get the whole scene rather than a tight crop. I did a tight crop. I ended up hating it, and I think this is just, I think the more green, especially with a barred owl, you can put in the photo, the better it is.
Yeah, and nice job.
Yeah, there's some great
shooting
stuff
into the light, which so many people don't like to do. So.
Yeah, I just real quick, Ray, because we actually had a conversation about this. We were out in the woods the other day talking about shooting in brighter light and some strategies for it.
Yeah.
And I watched a couple wildlife videos when I was first starting and had a photograph, and more than once I heard, always make sure the sun is directly at your back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't listen to that. So try different angles on light, and don't be afraid to shoot backlit, even on a stronger day when the sun is getting a little bit higher. I think here's another one, right? That where you're shooting kind of back into the sun.
Yeah, exactly. And let me just and talk a little bit more about what you just said. When I started out, I've watched every YouTube video that's out there about wildlife photography because I knew nothing. I wanted to learn as much as I could. And I'll tell you right now that I don't think there's anything that I watched in any one of those videos that I utilized in the field today.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as the proper shutter speed for birds in flight.
Correct.
What direction is the bird flying? What kind of bird is it? It's so generalized, and a lot of, especially with owls, all that kind of goes out the window anyway. But
sure.
Baby barred owl. Again, this is all about doing the work up front, finding a nest. When's it gonna fledge? They don't stay. 2 days later, this bird was 100 feet high in the canopy.
Yeah.
It never came back down. I never photographed it again.
Yep.
So
that's how it works.
This is pretty much eye level. Got really lucky with some nice light and some nice foreground and background elements.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then again, if you have, this is a great gray owl, a bad photo of it just sitting there, and if you're on an owl and you have all the time in the world, just wait.
The light's going to
change.
That's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the next photo.
There you go.
Boom. And again, this is dodged and burned, but you can see the natural light is hitting the side of its face, whereas the other photo, its face was pretty much in
shade.
Complete shadow.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
And so, and when light hits the side of an owl and lights up things, and there's harsh shadows, it can make a really, really dramatic effect.
Correct.
And again, the photo that you saw before is a raw file, so that's obviously not what our eyes see. So,
yeah.
I mean, I process things. You know, these kind of photos, I'm not afraid to cross some moral boundaries in terms of post-processing, as long as it looks how I saw it.
Sure.
You know, for the most part.
And so
if I have
exactly.
To black out some background, then so be it.
Yeah, definitely. And these examples we're looking at right now are a perfect example of what we're just talking about. You know, really strong side light. You know, and actually playing with those shadows and taking advantage of them is key here.
Yeah, so believe it or not, this is really close to what it looked like in the raw file. And there was a few hot spots in the background, and again, this is bad light out in the open forest and meadows and stuff. This is like 11 o'clock in the morning, so the light's horrible. I'm in a really dense patch of woods, and there's just spotlights all over the place, and just 100% luck that this female great gray was standing
right in that.
This,
that's so great.
This little, 6 foot high, broken tree, and just standing in the light.
Yeah, this next one I absolutely love. You just recently shared. It's just got so much good stuff going on with it. You know, great light, great composition, great eye contact.
The framing's out of control.
Correct. There. Yeah. So nicely done.
Yeah. So. This again, like to get good photos, especially of owls. I mean, any bird, you have to be willing to put in the work. You have to be willing to get up early, stay late, scout. Good photos don't just jump out at you. This is a pair of great horned owls out in Central Oregon on BLM land. There's nobody out there. It's probably 1,000 acres of western junipers, dust, and sagebrush. And one of my friends in Portland who spends quite a bit of time in Bend, back and forth between Bend and Portland for work, he put me on this pair. I didn't go find it myself. So he's been following this pair of great horned owls for like 5 years. And I was out there April 27th weekend. That was my birthday weekend. I went out. Both young were still in the nest, but they were like really big, and I was like, those birds look like they could be out any day. And one of them was even standing on the edge of it.
Nice.
And so I had to work all week. So that was Sunday night. I had to work all week. I took Friday off. I got up at 2:30 in the morning. I was on the highway by 3. Got out to this spot right at sunrise, so 5:50. Walked in, and within 10 minutes, one of them was still in the nest. That was the first one I saw. Couldn't believe how unlucky I was. And then this one was 2 junipers over. This bird is really high for a juniper. I mean, this is probably 25 feet high.
Okay.
So I just back up, try to frame it. And then since I got up so early, I'm able to get light. This photo was possible for maybe 10 minutes. If I was there too early, there would not be any dramatic light. And if I was there too late, it would look terrible.
It'd just be harsh sitting. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So timing with that stuff can definitely be important. I know you have a few more examples of light here, and then a couple of other concepts to talk about. So we'll try and move through these and get to them. So
cool. So that bad sticky photo, the long-eared owl habitat, same thicket. I think it might have been a different day. Super early morning sunlight, and just I had this roost had like 13 birds in it. So when there's more, usually a couple of them are a little less obstructed. Got really lucky, and light just blasted the side of it, and I saw it, and I freaked out. And this is what I did.
Playing with some strong shadows and everything. Another great example of doing that. So this is awesome.
Same thing. So obviously there's a lot of hot spots and stuff. Little keyhole hot spots. This bird's in some really thick stuff, but the light across its face. That's a natural light line. And then obviously the background is burned down, but anything when light hits a bird in the eyes, it can be really cool.
Oh yeah, for sure, definitely.
That's awesome.
And then my favorite lighting right here. Yeah.
Yeah, backlighting. So again, like short-eared owls, this short-eared owl just flew through some backlight, and don't be afraid to take the photo. I can't really say much about that other than I was just present. And, and I'm looking for anything that's a little bit different. So
exactly. Yep. Yeah, I mean, so many people, especially in an open field, owls flying around like this, they're only looking in the direction with the sun behind them. So they're looking at the subject having light landing on it. So you never even turn around to see this happen. So I've actually been standing in a field with these flying around, and I'm facing the complete opposite direction from every other photographer lined up there for this exact reason, to get something similar to that. And I haven't been successful yet, but one of these days,
So here's a northern pygmy owl in no light. This was like, I would say 10 or 15 minutes after sunset.
Yeah, you're pushing.
Pretty cloudy day, so.
Yep.
Again, it's not a great photo. It's not like a stunner, but kind of blue and just kind of.
It's got that dusky feel to it, which is awesome.
Really, really dark.
Yeah, you don't have to leave after the sun sets, as I'm sure you'll prove momentarily.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk. I got two pairs of photos here. I wanted to talk about. I like to try to tell a story, whether that be with light or action or just some sort of element other than just the birds. So I wanted to talk about eliminating myself from the photo, because a human standing there, that's an element of the photo. So the photo on the left, this great gray is looking at me.
Yep.
And to the viewer, it's looking at the them. So
sure.
I'm obviously a part of that scene. The picture on the right is the same bird, but instead of looking at me, it's looking down on this log, and it's trying to figure out how to walk because it's really wobbly. And I just think for me, it's such a dynamic in a photo when there's nothing but just the bird and what it's doing, and taking yourself out of that. So it's just as if nobody was there, and it's just a photo of what was really going on.
Yeah, that's perfect. Let me just hop back here. I'll bring up these next two.
So same kind of thing. This is a baby great gray climbing a tree. The first photo, it's looking at me, and the second photo, it's looking up at the tree. Probably thinking, man, I got a long way to go.
The determination look right here is really good.
So to me, I just think this photo is much stronger just because it's showing not only it climbing up the tree, but its eye direction looking up, and I think it tells a little bit more of a story, and that story doesn't involve me.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, that's nicely done.
Just kind of right place, right time. I don't know what I was thinking with this. Just kind of some luck, and knowing your subject, and kind of anticipating behavior and what it's going to do. So obviously this bird was on the ground and it was moving. You look around, you're like, it's going that direction. That's the first thing it's going to jump on, and you just get ready. So the quality of this photo is pretty poor. I don't think it was in very good focus. The bird's pretty much, when it's in the grass, you can't really see but the top of its head. So
gotcha.
It's pretty. Yep.
Yeah, showing some interaction and behavior is great though, like this.
Yeah. So when something like this, when it's a kind of an intimate moment, a feeding moment, this kind of photo I think warrants a little bit tighter of a crop. And I don't know what the settings are. I don't even think I was all the way out at 500.
No, 440. Sure. Yep.
Yeah. So, again, right place, right time. Hey, scout a nest, go there when babies, wait around.
That's awesome.
And get lucky. Yep.
Nicely done. Yeah. There, another great one. That's so nice.
Yeah, same thing. There's 3 babies out. Mom's hunting. Which babies are gonna feed?
Yep.
Position yourself right. Take the time to look around, and give yourself the best opportunity to get lucky. It's not always gonna work. You can do everything right, and the bird's just gonna do something else.
Totally.
But
if you try enough, you'll be there when it happens.
Yep.
Nice use of lighting here.
Yeah. So this was pretty late. Late after, or kind of early evening, maybe like 45 minutes before sunset. This is one of the tightest crop photos you'll ever see out of me, probably. And for me, this is a great gray owl in flight. And I completely said I don't like to take these photos. but for me, it's all about not only the light, but the wing position and just kind of the peak behind the wings. I think this is the coolest wing position you could ever get out of a great gray.
Yep.
And
it really shows them off nicely.
That I like it. This is after sunset.
Really 4,000 ISO, nice.
Yeah, pretty poor quality, but a lot of people think, hey, how, a lot of time we associate an owl flying at you hunting with baiting, and that's not always the case. With this, it was just a matter of, hey, this owl is working this tree line. It's only going to fly towards me. So I loop around, I get way far back out in the little marshy meadow. And I know it's obviously not going to fly through the trees. It's hunting this way.
Yeah.
So I just basically line myself up with it way, way, way far back because I know it's going to fly at me or fly toward me in some manner, whether it's right at me or kind of off to the side. But it's only going to get closer, so I'm not afraid to be really far back. And that's what you get. It's just a matter of identifying a moment and taking advantage.
That's great.
Again, 3 babies. 1 baby was off in no man's land, wasn't going to get anything. The baby that got fed that we just saw a couple pictures later, it got fed like 3 times in a row. So I was like, all right, this baby's, it's all or nothing.
It's due.
So
yeah.
I stood behind the tree that the baby was in.
Okay.
So it couldn't see me, and I just kind of got far enough back to where the female felt comfortable maybe coming in.
Gotcha.
And she did, and that's
it.
Yeah.
Another great incoming shot like that. It looks like it's on the attack there, which is really cool.
So this little segment's all about anticipation and patience and being ready, and this photo is completely botched. You probably can't tell on the screen, but the face is completely out of focus and the tail is razor sharp.
Yep.
And I wanted to share it because great grays and barred owls will do this too, but in the kind of mid-afternoon when they're just kind of hanging out and sitting there, if they're low enough, they'll kind of sleep hunt where they're sleeping, but if they hear something, they'll become alert and they'll cycle on and off, and they're really opportunistic hunters.
Yeah.
And so me and my friend were sitting around for like an hour and a half, and we didn't have anything better to do, and we just kind of like backed up, 40 yards or so, and this great gray was sleep hunting, and
caught you
like
off
an
guard.
hour and a half later. Yeah, so an hour and a half later, I'm pretty. My mind's pretty gone at this point. I've raised my lens and put it back down like a million times, and then she just kind of went without warning. So I just kind of like blind fired. I just raised it and started shooting, and so that photo, I think if a lot of people saw that, it looks like something sketchy's going on. But those photos are possible.
Oh yeah,
just natural behavior.
Yeah, for sure.
Another missed opportunity. That's a baby great gray fledging. Again, you can do everything in your power. This was timed perfectly. I mean, I got to see a baby great gray actually jump out of a nest, and I looked at it. I looked at the nest, and I was like, where can I stand? What way is this baby gonna jump? And basically, I just picked the absolute worst spot possible, and it jumped right in line with the tree. We were talking about this earlier. This was shot at 1/1600th of a second.
Yeah.
And the tree is still blurry from pulling down so fast. This baby, when they jump, there's no float. They completely they just go.
Well, you can see like the flight feathers here. There's nothing there. It's just, it doesn't, you can see through it. So, yeah, that's not going to help it fly too well.
They're dropping like a rock.
Yeah. All right, and I know this is something you've definitely perfected and worked hard at over the last little bit. So if you can just give us an idea of the concept, and we'll show these last couple of photos here.
Yeah, so this was pretty close to dark. This is just a kind of a standard portrait of a barred owl, but I think what a lot of people, when they're first starting out, they'll see a scene, and if it's dark, they'll just jack their ISO up to get, the 1/50th or 1/100th of a second or whatever. So this was taken at 1.3 seconds at f7.1 ISO 200. So if those settings confuse you, f7.1 on my lens is pretty a pretty great deal sharper than f5.6.
Gotcha.
And I know that at 1.3 seconds, when owls are still, they're completely still. And if they're going to move, 1/50th of a second isn't going to help you anyway.
Correct. Yeah.
So at that point for me, it's all, it's a percentage game, but they're definitely, the opportunities are there. So I'm no stranger, and I'm not afraid to shoot however long I need to, and just a shutter release is essential, so you can just hammer down in live view or mirror lockup, and just keep taking photos.
Nice.
And like I said, if they're still, they're still. This
2 seconds.
2 seconds.
Yeah.
Again, f7.1,
Yep.
ISO 1600. So this is pretty dark.
It's definitely dark there.
And this is a Western screech owl coming out of her nest cavity. She probably sat there for like 15 minutes. And again, if she moves her head, there's no setting that's gonna save it.
No.
So
yeah, just incredible shot. And then this last one is just off the charts.
So
nice.
I wish I could say that I go out in the backcountry in the woods, and I take all my owl photos, and I work hard, and I search for hours and hours and hours, and sometimes that's true, but this is one of my favorite owl photos I've ever taken, just because it's so unique to get a Western screech owl at eye level and a Western red cedar coming out. So this was 1/10 of a second, and this was taken in my friend's backyard.
That's
I was
awesome.
actually standing on his back deck, and a beer in my left hand, and a shutter release in my right hand, and I was just taking photos.
There you go.
And
that's a good day right there.
Exactly. So owls are everywhere, and Western screech owls are a great example here in Portland. They're in everybody's backyard. If you have a Western, they're everywhere, but they're so hard to find. I think they're harder to find than a saw-whet because they tend to roost higher and closer to the trunk, and so they don't leave as much evidence, and they really, really tuck themselves in. But
nice, man.
Yep.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for showing all these photos, and just a kind of overview for everyone watching, and work hard. that's the one of the biggest keys I've taken away from this. A lot of the concepts with owl photography certainly cross over, and that's think about what you're doing, really watch your compositions, really pay attention to the light. I mean, these are things that apply to all wildlife photography. Obviously, as we talked about, on a little bit of a different time scale with these birds, that you get to take a little bit longer with them, but obviously the flip side of that is they are incredibly hard to find in a photographic a spot that's good for photography. And as Adam said many times, putting in the effort ahead of time, well before the photo is even taken, or you're even out to take the photo, putting in that time and effort in scouting and researching and looking for places that can be good can definitely result in a great payoff. So thank you so much for sharing all those ideas and concepts and great photos.
And just a quick closing remark for anybody out there who wants to go find their own owls. I get called an owl whisperer. I hate that. Like, I know people mean it, mean well. There's no such thing as an owl whisperer. Really, if you just educate yourself on the species, their habitat, learning, not all owls vocalize year round. So February, March, April is a great time to hear them. And just take the time, get up early. Dawn and dusk are great. And I think, reaping the, rewards later is a really special feeling. So use your tools, use eBird, learn what owls are, in your area at what time of year or year round, and, go find your own. And when you do, you can keep coming back, and it's a lot of fun.
For sure, definitely. Scott and I are going to each share a couple of our favorite owl photos that we've taken. We don't have near as many or the variety that Adam had, but we did just want to kind of throw a couple of ours out there real quick. So, Scott, if you want to share your screen with me, I will.
I just got, I will say this, and you guys know I shoot a lot, so I don't actively look for owls. I kind of passively look
Same
for
here.
them. And one of the issues with the Northeast is once somebody find one, it becomes like crowd photography, and I really don't like that. So I don't get a lot of owls. I got a couple out in Utah. I got a long-eared right there. Got a long-eared owl.
Let me get switched over to your screen here just a moment.
Yeah.
I think you just need to share your screen with me.
Yep, I got it.
You got it? Here it
so,
comes.
Scott, what'd you find your long-eared in?
It was in a weird spot out in the middle of the desert on this really odd property that's like an oasis, and I was really lucky that I got an invite to go out and just look around the place because the guy has all kinds of neat stuff. And he had like 12 long-eareds on the property, and we couldn't find them anywhere. And I expected the first one to, I expected this giant, like owl to be there. And he's like, no, they're a lot smaller than you probably think. And it was a lot smaller than I thought. But we did get lucky enough to see one.
So you just got your snowy owl up right now? Oh, yeah, there's your long-eared.
Yeah,
okay.
And that's probably the only one I'm going to share with the group. This is the only owl that I really like. So of all my photos of owls, this is it.
Yeah, and we
got
took
a couple
that
shorties
together this last year.
Long-eared and one barn owl that other people seem to like, but this is the only one that I really look at and say, yeah, that's a nice owl photo.
Yeah, nice. I'll share one of my quick snowies too. It was taken the same day with Scott, and it's one that I did, just to try, like Adam was talking about. I wasn't necessarily hiding a man-made perch in this case, but I was trying to hide the perch and give it a little bit more of a mysterious look. So I hit the deck really low with some snow on the ground and just tried to make the owl look like it was almost just kind of floating in this sea of white space on the overcast day with the light snowfall. So something a little different, and I was really happy with the outcome on that. Anything else you want to show, Scott?
No, that's it, man.
You good to go? All right, cool. Thank you, everyone, for spending the time to watch, and thanks for all the comments. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them on the YouTube version that we will drop. Like Scott said, make sure to follow us over on the Wildlife Inspired channel on YouTube. We're going to be trying to make a switch over there in the near future. And in 2 weeks from now, so 2 Wednesdays from now, we're going to have the episode that we've had, the most requested episode, which is the gear talk. So Scott and I, it'll just be the two of us. We're going to be showing you all the gear we have, all the gear we use, how we use it. We're going to try to have some recordings of us using our gear out in the field, so we can kind of show you exactly how we like to use it. And then we'll be available to answer questions that you guys may have about different gear options and stuff like that. So, that should be a fun one that everybody will hopefully enjoy. And we'll let you guys know a little bit more details about it when it gets closer. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great night, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.